Hello.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to see you all here. I hope you've enjoyed your lunch. That was amazing, wasn't it? I rolled in the door after conducting the service at Guildford and was greeted by all this food. I'm going to go away on another Sunday morning and see if it happens every time. But my name's Margaret, and I'm one of the majors here at Woking Salvation Army, and it's my privilege to welcome you all here to this lovely building this afternoon as we join together in the book launch of the book that Ian and Alison have written. So it's really lovely to see you all here. I welcome you all. We look as though we've got some mastermind contestants here. I hate to think what their specialist subjects are going to be, but I'm going to hand over to Ian, I do believe. So welcome to each and every one of you.
At your peril. Let's give everyone a clap because you're all here. All right. So I think I know everybody here. Ian Campbell is my name. I want to thank, first of all, David and Margaret House-Majors, the vicars, if you like, the people in charge of the Salvation Army here, for allowing this to be hosted here along with members of the congregation. It's really great. But the congregation is wide, and so in a moment we're going to welcome different parts of the Woking community. You know, we're going to get to that point, so be ready. What I want to say is that I'll just say my thing right now, and it will then flow quite quickly toward a suitable conclusion when David just closes and shares a prayer. I want to say that there's a history to this book, and we'll talk about that in a moment, and I'll talk about that a bit. We'll do a little panel discussion. We're going to hear from these three panelists. I'll introduce them in a moment. After that panel discussion, we're going to have a session whereby Alison, whom you know, will come here and invite comment from the floor. In other words, if you have a potent statement to make or a thought or reflection to bring about the notion of community and how it can work, how if it doesn't work, you know, it shows that it's really needed, or something like that from your experience in Woking or beyond, just feel free to offer your piece of wisdom. Are you ready? And if you want to offer a piece of wisdom, experience, thought about how things can work better, then let's hear from you. I'm thinking of some that have traveled with us as well as I make that invitation. The history of this book is that over many years, Alison and I worked with the Salvation Army internationally in many, many parts of the world, probably over 50 countries, and we stimulated the transfer of responses to HIV and AIDS and all its concerns from Zambia, which you see represented in the exhibition over there, to well over 50 countries. But that took time. It took over 25 years to see that happen, of constant provoking, constant accompaniment, constant linkage, returning to places, seeing how you're doing, and basically traveling together. And what we found through the AIDS response, and it's applicable to COVID, to Ebola, to drug addiction in the UK, to domestic violence, anything you want to name, community matters. And community is made up of home, street, neighborhood, and connected institutions such as the ones you represent and such as the Salvation Army in Woking. It's a relational connection that matters, and that's what community is all about. And what we learned about that through HIV and transferring and seeing that in different parts of the world, we documented pretty closely. Around 2012, we were provoked and suggested, it emerged that we should go back and visit 21 of those countries that we'd been accompanying over those years. That was about like a 20 to 25 year period, as I've said, and we went back at that point. You see 6 of those countries represented in the exhibition. When we put that together, we knew we had to do something with it, and we kept the record as a potential backdrop to a book, even though I couldn't summon the energy or couldn't sense the timing to do such a thing as a book. What, write a book? Who does that? And so it just had to stay put. So we did a film instead. We did the film in 2017. It was called Together, A Journey of Neighborhood Conversations, and that looks at the neighborhood journey of Mizoram over there in India, of Zambia, of Atlanta in the United States, and in China, which is around the corner on the other side of the world. But we only were able to represent 4 countries, and still people like Andy Stickland at this call. Where are you, Andy? Are you here? Yes. He kept saying to me in the after-church coffee, you should do a book. I said, no, I don't really. Do I need to do it? Oh, okay, we'll do a book. And that must have been about like 5 years ago, I think. So the book started to generate as an idea, and at the same time, and when I turned a bright young age of 65 3 years ago, I figured that I needed to do something adventurous and exciting, and I thought, okay, I'll walk the Southwest Coastal Path, 630 miles. It should be easy, just 22 miles a day. Go to the swimming pool at the end of the day, relax, get ready for the next day, and off you go again. It was not quite like that, if I may say. Like, you average 2 miles an hour when you stop talking with people and you listen to stories, which was the intention. And you have some ice creams and Cornish pasties, which you have to keep the calories up. And it takes time. So the 30-mile-a-days took 15 hours. So if you want to join for a 15-hour day, yeah, okay, you're on your own. I'm not doing this again. So it was a good adventure, though, and it was a time it became clear that we could put that idea of a book and the walk together, because the methodology was to meet people on the path, listen to story. Everybody on that path is there for a reason, especially if they're a whole path walker, right? That means walking the whole path, in case you don't get what I'm saying. So they're doing it for loss, fear, celebration, connection to many people, for faith reasons, all kinds of reasons why people are in that path. And if you just stop and say, hello, how are you, and why are you here, the story spills out. It just happens to be like that. And so I found it easy Alison and I found it easy to connect the stories of the path for each day, particularly significant stories, to somewhere else in the world. Like you hear a story of conflict locally in family or in a town in Britain, you think of Rwanda and genocide, and you think, oh, there's a story that connects. What are the meanings that you can extract? So the chapter for Rwanda is all about that. It's the encounter on the path, linking to Rwanda, and then saying, well, what have we learned about this thing of conflict and of reconciliation? And, you know, it's not a difficult read. It's only about 2 or 3 pages intentionally, each chapter. It's more pictures, so if you like pictures, go for the pictures. If you like adventure, go for the path. If you like narrative analysis, Terry, go for that, and make sure you read it and enjoy it. So it depends what you want. It's there in the book. But that's how the book formed. And so the methodology was to walk for 3 hours, think about a story like, for example, from Chile or from Mumbai or from Delhi or from Australia, and think of the encounters on the path and then connect them and then distill the key learnings. And I would then stop at 8 o'clock with co-walkers, and we would get out the dictaphone like this, and I would just dictate as I walked the next hour. And it flowed, is all I can say. You know, it was in the experience of encounter with people that the encounters with people around the world came back to mind. And the deep reflections on what comes when you hear serious stories was able to be put into words. I don't think if I'd sat down at home with an office or something, I could have found the words in the right way. It needed to be done in the moment, in the experience itself, in order for experiential learning gains that we had made to be put down on paper. Are you with me? You can't do a theoretical thing. You've got to make it happen from real life experience. And that's what the book became. It took 4 years to produce it. COVID came and went. No, it hasn't gone. Thank you. It's still here. And many people have been helpful along the way. But that's the story of the genesis of the book. Going back to 2012, there's some fellow travelers. Where do we see you? Peter, where are you? Hands up. Peter, yes, India. Motorbike man in Sriakadu in Kerala. And we had Sue, who's here. She'll speak in a moment. Yes, the timeliner expert. Yes, thank you. And then also we had Andrew. Where's Andrew? Thank you, sir. You joined us for the last chapter in Poland. Last but definitely not least. There you are in the last chapter in the book. Great to have you there. And then, of course, there was someone else who was going to be here today. Jan Howland, is she here today? She joined us, having been connected to working. She joined us in Estonia. Not forgetting John Martin, who kindly played the piano for us and will do so again, who, not in the book, but similar sort of ethos of joining us in upstate New York for a walk around streets and neighborhoods where guns and drugs proliferated. And there it goes. And not forgetting... It's very much like Atlanta. In fact, that's your experience, John. But anyway, people in this room have joined, and you've made a difference by joining. But not only that, there were fellow walkers. And where's Robin E? Where is Robin? Okay, Robin is somewhere. There she is. Okay, so fellow walkers Robin and John and Stanley the dog, who is a beautiful dog belonging to John. And there were a few other co-walkers as well. Have I missed anybody out who joined for the walking? I was going to mention you. I have a special phrase for you, Hayley. There was a thing that generated, because you were involved, along with Robin, called Hayley Pace. Yeah, and Hayley and Robin kind of set the pace. Like, there's Robin and there's Hayley. They're both as fit as each other, and it was hard to keep up. They were really fast. But that was very important because we had to have paces by the time they joined. It was like week 2 or 3, and the legs were looking a bit wobbly, and they were, and things like that. So, Hayley, you're famous for the Hayley Pace phrase. Thank you very much. So, various people have joined in and have made this come together. Alison, as the finder-in-chief of me on the path when there was no network signal, she managed to find me many times. Don't know how. And then, not forgetting someone who's not here, who tried to come today from the Salvation Army International Headquarters, who helped in editing, the fine point editing of the whole book. Her name is Laura, and she couldn't come today because she got a corneal abrasion or something like that, and she was going to bring her child. She just couldn't make it. But we do appreciate that team at the Salvation Army International Headquarters that has worked unrelentingly to help put a high-quality product, you could say, a high product gift to many people, which was to our expectations, but beyond our expectations as well. I mean, they've done a magnificent job, but in their absence, we say thank you. The IHQ launch was just a few weeks ago on the 24th of February, on the day that the invasion of Ukraine happened. And so it was a very poignant touch point for how is it possible to accompany communities that are in deep trauma and distress. Well, we can find ways. The book says how we can do that. The exhibition says that. It doesn't happen in an instant. It takes time to build that relationship, and then you get invited to engage, and you have to go with a sense of trust and with team and with connection in order to stay safe, and also to believe that you are accompanied by God in this sort of journey. It's really important. And so many of you know that that is true. Whatever our background here today, it's just true. When you reach certain points of distress or loss or fracture in your life, those things come to mind generally for most people. I want to just acknowledge very briefly that there are some special parts of the Woking community, starting with, of course, the Brookwood community. Put your hands up, people, and just say hi. Yes, very good. We want to give them all a clap. You've got to raise your hands much better than that when you clap. Brookwood neighbourhood. Yes, thank you. And then, of course, we have with us as well people who are linked to Lakeview. And this is so important because there's a chapter in the book on Lakeview over the road. Who's here from Lakeview? Put your hands up. Yes, yes, and over the back. And where's Jess and family and everybody else? No? They've got it. They had to go. But they've been here, and they're a great neighbourhood, very resilient. And they showed their mettle during the COVID response by being neighbourhood connectors, supremo, really good. Then not forgetting, of course, that there's a thing over there called the Woking Leisure Centre. Hands up from the Woking Leisure Centre. Show your leisure. Yes, up the back. And, yeah, they are the outliers. They're eating all the food. They're the naughty corner or something like that. And Joe, thank you very much for helping to shape the very key phrase, buy two, give one free. If you're wondering about where that give one free goes, it goes to people who can't afford or access this book. And we've got at least 100 names where such a book is going. There's another 100 that we could send. And so every time you buy two and you're giving one, that's what happens. So, you could say which part of the world you want it to go and we'll get it there. We have particular people and places in mind. And it started to happen already during a recent trip to Zambia that John and I did just about 3 weeks ago. And he may mention that when he says his thing. It's just about enough from me. What I want to say is, first of all, that I will introduce this panel. The panel will be followed by Alison and her part, where you get your part. We're going to hear from John, who will bring something. And it's a surprise. Don't know what it is. And then comes Amanda with a word. You come in then, Amanda, with a word. So her name is Amanda McLaughlin, not Amanda with a word, but it is. She will have a word. And then she'll hand the mic over straight to Major David House, who will close. So it'll just flow. Nothing more from me after I introduce this panel. On my left is Sue. You've met her already, Sue Saul. She's just a goer. I mean, she's been so much in the NHS and keeping things moving in times of stress. Out there where she lives, Camberley, Farnborough, Frimley. That's what I thought so. Camberley, but the hospital was, I thought so. So we're both right. So yeah, and so she was able to come with us to India. She may reflect on that, but she's got 2 minutes or so to give her thoughts on walking with communities and what it might mean. Then there's a little video clip from Hong Kong, and a good friend there who we've worked with in China a lot and in other places like Ethiopia, Myanmar, Thailand. She'll reflect very briefly. Then we have Jay. All right, Jay Shah, he's a man with a kind heart, and he's one of the best connectors that I know in working. He knows people all over the place, and he connects people just to get to them to talk to each other. That's what I really want to say. He has this generous approach to life that has to do with being with people and doing good with people, and he has a strong charity experience, and he does a lot of that within this town of Woking. So we're glad to have you, Jay. You'll be following on after the video clip from Hong Kong. Then there will be a video clip or two from Zambia, and then John will finish this fine panelist reflection time just by saying whatever comes to your mind. John, you've got a couple of minutes, okay? John is a key facilitator in the Woking AA community, and he, very helpfully for this particular church, he helps a group happen here on Tuesdays, which is just one part of what he does around the whole town and beyond in that area. Such a champion accompanier of so many other people. It's really moving when you hear what he gets up to and how others that he's linked with do the same thing. So now you've heard about the panel, you know what's happening, you know that this will just run itself. Let's just say thanks to the panel, and then you're going to hear from Sue, starting first of all. Okay, ready? Go.
That was longer than 2 minutes you had. I've been given 2 minutes to speak, and it's going to be difficult for me if you know me. So I'm going to try my best. So 10 years ago, I was privileged to travel with Ian and Alison and Peter and another team of people to India. We went to Mizoram and to Kerala, and I really learnt such a lot on that journey. I didn't really know, I didn't get what Ian and Alison were all about. Do any of you ever feel like that when you first met them? I didn't quite get it. But once we got to India, I began to quickly realise and really learn what community was all about. We met some amazing people there. We went to so many different places. Pete and I could probably talk for about 3 hours about the experiences we had in India. We went to an orphanage where all the children, it's actually on the wall there, were affected by AIDS, which was very moving. We went to Kerala, where the area was completely devastated by that dreadful tsunami, where people had lost their lives, they'd lost their houses, they'd lost everything, but yet they'd managed, with the help of the community, to build themselves back up, to build themselves back together. I learned that community was what mattered. As a healthcare professional, I worked in a hospital for 30 years. And I never really realised what an importance that community is. Neighbours, friends, family. People are so keen these days, aren't they, to dump their relatives on the door of a hospital. And I think it's just was so important to me to learn that actually it's far more important to have a caring community around you, helping you, guiding you, and being there for each other and be able to connect those communities. That's what I learned in India, that communities were connecting with each other and able to help each other out. So what did that do for me? It brought me back here to Woking. I became quite part of the neighbourhood visits. So I learned that they were doing in India, which were probably far in advance to what we do here in this steep upper lift country, where we're afraid to speak to our neighbours, where we're afraid to knock on doors. Ian and Alison taught me through that we could come back and those same things that we did in India, we could do here in Woking. And that's why the work of the neighbourhood visits have become such an important part of this Salvation Army here at Woking. I learnt that my community was wherever you are. And my community at that time was Frimley Park Hospital. I learnt that apart from doing my everyday job, I could actually connect with people on a more personal level, with people that maybe had issues that they didn't speak about at work. But then you can actually get alongside people. I'm retired now. I've joined the ranks of the retired people. And I've got a new community. I've got a new community of dog walkers. I never realised that you could meet so many people through walking a dog. Some of these people, I don't know their names. I know the names of their dogs. I know Monty and I know Gary the Vizsla and I know Alfie and Archie, but I don't actually know their names yet, but I'm working on that. I've learned that I can speak to people at quite personal levels when you're walking dogs. You just walk along and then somebody says, oh, I'll walk with you today. And I've had such deep and meaningful conversations. So all I'm going to say to you today is that community is actually where you are. And I learned that through my trip to India.
Hi, I'm Puisi from Hong Kong. Congratulations to Ian and Alison for sharing the book, Walking with Communities. The story is amazing. I enjoy reading so much. Particularly, it refreshed my memories of the project I worked in China. So this is 10 or 20 years ago, but the way of doing the methodologies is still fresh to me. The thought framework and methodologies have been working throughout the years in different kinds of projects I've been doing. It's become a mentality, of the way of working. I carry from organizations to organizations. It's affirmed to me that all communities have the potential to respond. They can change, they can transform, they can have hope. So, and this is a survival kit to me. It reminds me in every situation, like when I encounter difficult projects, when the projects have troubles. It's also the skill set, to help me way out. So I encourage everyone can enjoy reading it, to experience how this is not only a journey to work with the communities, it's also a journey to...
Good afternoon, everybody. Everybody who is here, they would have met somebody somehow in any circumstances. But for me to meet Ian, would you believe it? It was in Jacuzzi at Woking Leisure Center. And I would say, what a place to meet, because you are relaxed. You have every 5 minutes jacuzzi switch off, so you have to make most of those 5 minutes before Ian goes to his sauna or steam room or wherever it is. But on those 5 minutes, I found out we have a lot of similarities. First is our African connection, where I come from. And secondly is the charity work. Now, I was so impressed with what he was doing, so I want to give you a brief my background. If you remember in 1972, when a lot of Asians came in this country, it was supported by the communities. They were rehoused by the communities, which I have never forgotten. It can be any organization. You can even see now what is happening to the people coming from Ukraine. It's communities who are involved. So when I came in 1974, there was an incident where there was a flood in Bangladesh. And this, what I call it, local people sold all his belongings, including his house, and gave the proceed to the relief fund. And I was so stunned. I came here penniless, and I wanted to be like him. And I realized this man wants to be like me. It just did not make sense. I was very young. And at that day, I decided that if I get opportunity, because I had no money, but you always think, if I get an opportunity, I'll be doing something similar what this gentleman did. This was in 1974, and that is always, and I'm very pleased that I'm involved with charities like what Ian is doing, and I'm always helping wherever it can. But for me, it's important, the communities. I was very pleased to see first time some of my customers here, whom I have not seen for 40 years. So I was involved in what I call it, I live in Old Woking, I still live there. And we had old village associations, we had a lot of communities, St. Peter's Recreation Ground. So we were involved in community, which helped me. I'm being honest, it was a business. But by getting involved, it gives you pleasure, it makes you happy. And what I am like to say is what the Ian book refers to is exactly community spirit. If everybody gets involved in the community, like it says, charity starts from home. If everybody gets involved in community in whatever way you can, I think we will be living in a lot better workplace. Thank you.
The magnificent Victoria Falls. This waterfall is considered to be the largest single curtain of falling water on Earth.
So how are we gonna get you back into the boat? We always use lapels here. Or the shoulders grab the jacket. We need to push you under. Why are we pushing you under? Is because of the release points. So the more we dip you under, the more you pop up. So you go in the count of 3, you go like 1, 2, then the third one.
Yeah, if I had to say anything, I would start by talking about the book and what happened to me. It took me to confirm the realization that grace can only be found when you are walking with community. I love the footprints and the faces that are actually hidden in the footprints. I was always looking at the one that is not wearing shoes. Jesus did it that way. And for the Salvation Army, William Booth did it that way. And reading this book, it brings out the real templates for life, what God wants us or expects of us, relationships, encounters, and sharing. And yeah, it was a beautiful read for me, and it helped confirm that our calling really is in the communities. If we are going to realize who we are
If I was on that boat on my own, I wouldn't be here now, because we got thrown out the boat, and the water was just mental. And the guy talked to us before we got on the boat, and he said, if you get thrown out, don't panic. Hold on to your lifeboat and relax. Lifeboat, your life jacket. And it was a real analogy of faith, and just like, and we trusted this guy. So this guy talked us through it, and there was 5 of us on the boat, and that boat was, and you felt safe in that community on the boat. You know, had we jumped on that boat, not known each other, how safe would I have felt? How secure would I have been? Probably not at all. You know, so it was like a mini community just came to mind, and these guys, I was privileged to travel to Zambia and encounter some people who these guys have affected in their lives, and communities they've affected, and see the living, breathing proof of what happens when people come together. And also, I'm blessed to be part of a fellowship that also does that. We come together weekly, daily. Well, daily there's 84 meetings in the Surrey area now every week, and through community, we come together, we meet, and we speak out our truth in a setting that is healing. It's God's there with us. You know, we sit and we speak out our truth, and it's an accepting, welcoming environment, you know, that's put on by lovely, places like this, which is of the same heart. And the miracle of that is that, I know for me as a suffering in my drinking days, when I was in that darkness of addiction, that I was isolated. I was on my own. I was isolated. I was frightened. I was scared. I wanted loads of people around me, but I pushed everyone away. I wanted all this stuff, but all I did was reject it. Do you know what I mean? I just pushed it because I was frightened, and I was ashamed. That was the big one. I was ashamed, a massive one, and it's a big theme in the faith story, I guess, as well. Shame. And when I finally at 29 came to the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous for a very torrid journey, I came to a place of acceptance, somewhere that just welcomed me in and sat me down and said, be who you need to be here. Just take a seat and be yourself. And I hated myself at that time in my life. I didn't know how I was ever going to be myself. And but this community, this fellowship of people, literally loved me back together. They completely, not just physically but metaphorically, wrapped their arms around me and put me back together over time. And I'll be 20 years sober next month, and I'm still very much a part of that. Oh, thank you. Thank you. And if we don't have that community of people don't recover. That's the truth. If we don't have that is the bottom line for us. If we don't have each other, we're done for. And I think that's a human story as well. When I went out to Africa, I see these villages and the way these guys live who have literally nothing. If they don't have each other, they have nothing. And that is a real story. And I think it really made me reflect about how our society, how I absolutely take that for granted now. I take so much for granted, and it was a real wake-up call, and blessing to have experienced. So, thank you. Thank you for letting me talk.
So I'm double-mic'd. They must think I'm very soft-spoken. Some people know differently, right? I know. Okay, so I'm Alison, as you know. And lovely to see you all here. I wanted to thank. I've got this mic on. Am I okay? Is it working? No, enough? Can't hear me. How's my British accent? Okay, here I am. Better? I want to thank this sequence of leaders who are here, who've welcomed us and been teammates with us in different ways. So Margaret and David, you've seen. And John and Ken and Wendy there. So they're the sequence of people who've made us at home here and helped us stay connected here. So just appreciation to you, and thanks for that. So there's lots of different stories here, because there are a few others who we've connected through St. Andrews, through the Lakeside Church, other ways that we've connected in here or out in the community. So, and neighbors that we've been with and teammates that we've been with. I'm looking at
several right here. So I'm just really grateful to see you all here, and I want to say thanks for that, for teammates at different points and in different ways. So this is like a moment, if anybody here wants to say, oh, this connects with me, or this resonates with me, there's something I want to add, this is your chance, as briefly as I can. Maybe like, and Ian's running the mic, and then I'll just start talking really loud.
Yeah, good.
Anybody? Isn't it on?
Yes, Yoma. Yoma has a word.
Not quite sure what I'm trying to say, but it's certainly come to my heart as you've been speaking, because I think I work for the Salvation Army at a conference centre not too far away at Sunbury-on-Thames, and trying to be really brief, a lot of our work is bringing in Salvation Army International leaders to come for intensive training for 6 weeks. They come from all over the world. And it's been the most profound, well, I think one of the most profound things in my life to actually work in this environment where they come, literally you can have a group of 35 people who come from every corner of the world. We have that 4 times a year. You know, from Papua New Guinea to USA Western, from Hong Kong to, you know, Zambia. And we've got a group coming in just over a week's time. The second one since COVID. And it's a Spanish translation group, so that's interesting. And I think I've learned such a lot, because Sunbury Court, is where I'm based, is a community in itself, I think. But when we have a session there's a very special kind of community of the world coming to us. So the world for a short while, comes to us. And my life has been so impacted and shaped, and my mind has been changed, and my heart has been changed by the experience of journeying just for a short while with people from another land. I've learned about the importance of trying to be humble, wrong word, learning from others in humility, that what I think is not the most important thing. Their experience is as important as my experience, that sometimes we can think our way of doing things is the best way, and unless you kind of, even for a fraction of time, listen to what they've got to say about their experience, and then you kind of learn from a community that way. And I could talk for a long time and I won't. I'm very mindful at the moment about translation, because we've got quite a number of delegates who are coming from South America, Latin America, from Spain, Portugal and so on, who want to be translated who need to be translated for. I thought the language doesn't need to be a barrier. I've discovered this in many translation sessions, that the love and care that we can have for each other and the communication is goes beyond language. So not to be scared about language and any of its forms. That's what I've learned. And thank you for this wonderful book.
Oh, thank you, Yoma. Anybody else?
Were you pointing to Andrew?
I was, but he said no.
Oh, I thought so. Yeah.
So I had the privilege of travelling with Ian and Alison to Poland. And this was a really tricky time in my life when I was just coming out of work that had been really great and I was made redundant. And I was taking 3 months off work to try and find what I wanted to do. So travelling with Ian and Alison was just amazing. As Sue said, when you first meet Ian and Alison, sometimes, well, Ian anyway, sometimes his talk just goes over my head. But I do love you, Ian. But you're amazing, and that journey was amazing, how what you had done in Poland in terms of the community that had been brought together. I know you're the facilitators, and it's the core within Poland that had done that, and just how welcoming they were. They didn't know me. I was a kind of outsider. I'd never been to any of the pre-visits, and this was the last visit, I think, that we did within Poland. They didn't know who I was, but they welcomed me into their community, chatted with them, and I was just accepted. And to me, that's what the community is, just acceptance of others. I mean, they say they didn't know me, but I was part of their community for that very short period of time.
Okay. So,
Oh, Peter has a word.
okay.
I think it was around about 2010, 2011 when I first got involved with Ian and Alison,
That's right.
who took me right out of my comfort zone, and that was visiting the community across the road. And that's not an easy thing to do, to go knocking on doors, but I learned a lot going with them. And then the opportunity came in 2012 when I was able to go to India with Sue to Mizoram. And you can't go on a thing like that without so many memories. And I've been thinking about what had happened there, and the things that came to mind. Sue mentioned about the orphanage, and there the orphanage was run by the children, and we were welcomed there by the chairman of the committee, who was a teenager, 12, 13, and she spoke such good English with American accent because she'd learned to speak the language by watching television. And they were all American shows. So he had American accent. I had the privilege of going to one of the corps, to a YP, to a young people's band practice. There, it was a case of sharing instruments. Some of the kids were playing, some weren't, and then they swapped over so they could all have a blow. Things like that. And also, one of the memories I have of driving to Mizoram Corps on the Sunday was to see the people going to their church all dressed in their Sunday best, children, adults, something we used to see here, but we don't see anymore. But there they were. And that time there, and seeing in Kerala where the fishermen were mending their nets, it was biblical. They were sitting there on the beach mending their nets. And one of the things that they said to us there was that about the Salvation Army, that when after the tsunami, instead of going there and doing what we thought we ought to do, we went there and said, what do you need? And it was their boats and their fishing nets they needed, and the army was there. It was quite an experience which I'll never, ever forget.
Okay. Yeah. So it's going to be John. Thank you, John. And then a word from Amanda, and David will close.
I wonder just for a few minutes if you'd like to stand, please. Just to stretch your legs. Thank you very much. That's the first standing ovation I've had before I played the piano. When Ian asked me to play the piano, I went to the British Library and looked at the extensive repertoire of piano pieces for book launches. And do you know how many I found? None. So I decided to write my own. So this afternoon you're going to be, don't applaud, you are going to be listening to the world premiere of the first and last piece of music based on a book, based on a walk, based on community. Here's the music if you want to see it. It starts with this note. I've got to explain it to you, otherwise it won't make any sense. It starts with this note, which is an F sharp. I know that a lot of you knew that it was an F sharp, but it's an F sharp. And the piece finishes with the same note. It's the piece really, it hasn't got a title, but it starts with my version of Ian starting his walk, looking outwards. You will hear some surprising noises. There'll be you looking out to sea, you starting your walk. There'll be a theme. Then there'll be a surprising counter of lot of notes that you will not make any sense of people chattering to him, which will be excitable. Then there'll be a poignant bar or two. Then an arpeggio, which is going up and down Dale on the coastal walk. And then you're homeward bound, and you finish on the F sharp. So, the good news is that you don't know what's going to happen. The good news is that you don't know how long it is. The good news is that you don't know how many notes I played incorrectly. And the even better news is that you'll never hear it again. So thank you for your applause in advance. Here's a piece with yet to have a title, but based on your journey.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, John. That was amazing. Really beautiful. I'm the community manager here, and that sounds like my day, really. It starts, and sometimes it goes through all those notes just in one day. But this place is very special. It's a wonderful place where a community comes together. And even just something like today, where all the lovely sandwiches and food that we could share, I could never do it without helpers and volunteers and people just coming by and dropping cakes and Yes, it's just wonderful. And there's so many connections that happens in this building. Just in the week, we've had the guy from the man shed come to ask for a bike rack and ended up building the pantry shelves for the food bank. You know, these things just happen, and it's so amazing when communities walk together. Now, the most important part is, if you haven't bought a book yet, please do. And if you are blessed enough to sponsor one for one of these wonderful people out in the world, you can see their faces if you can. Please do so as well. It's very close to Ian and Alison's heart to get books out to those people who can't afford it. What's next for Ian and Alison? They'll be off to Australia to see family, which they haven't seen for over 2 years, and there's a grandchild. So we pray that you will have a lovely time, a safe time, and we look forward to the next book. So I think just also to mention that all the proceedings from this book will go to the Salvation Army. And I think that what would bring the most joy to Ian and Alison is for people who read the book to be inspired to walk out, just out your front door or into the supermarket or around your church or dog walking, wherever you go. Make every encounter count. Make every conversation a shared point, and find that God's grace is everywhere. Yeah. Thank you.
So that's it. You've heard everyone speaking, haven't you? You've bought your book. And I was sitting there looking at the title there, Walking with Communities. And I thought walking or journeying with communities. And then I got to progressing with communities. And I guess that's really what it's about, because in all the stories that we've heard and the thousands of stories that we haven't heard, there will have been a progression, somebody moving forward because of the fact that they've been in community. And Jay, I was quite interested to hear you say that you met Ian in Jacuzzi. My first thought was that's some Asian village somewhere. but then I realised what you were actually talking about. And you know, whether we meet somebody in a jacuzzi or in some land that we've never been to before isn't really the important thing. Because it comes back to those who were in worship this morning. It comes back to the fact that we are charged to love God and to love our neighbour. Whether our neighbour is sitting next to us in a jacuzzi or in a country that we've never been to, and just confront them almost by accident. And so I guess wherever we are, some people will find it easy to talk. Ian goes overboard with everything. You saw that on the image with the raft. He always goes overboard on everything. That's his nature. Somebody else would be quite reserved and would struggle to progress in community with somebody else. And so I'm just going to share some words of scripture, which is a prayer really, and a reminder that we can all journey in community with other people, because we can do it in the strength that God makes available to us. So thank you for Ian for putting this idea into paper. Thank you to those who have worked to make this possible. Thanks to you who have come along and supported. Thanks to our folks here who have shared this afternoon. But now I want to just say thanks to God for the promise he's going to give to us. And he gives us a promise in a letter that he writes to the early church in Ephesus. And it says this: to him, to God, to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or dare to imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. And when we step out in his power and achieve the things that he plans for us to achieve, then the glory goes to God and to Jesus for now and forevermore. So thank you very much, folks. Journey in confidence in your community, in your care with your neighbour, your interaction with your neighbour. Journey with confidence, knowing that God is empowering you to do what is necessary in that situation. May God bless you all. Amen.
Thank you all, and stick around as long as you like. We'll be starting to tidy the hall up after about an hour or so. If you want to stay back to help, you're very welcome. But there's still some cake, there's still some books, there's still plenty of things to happen and plenty of people to meet, so enjoy, okay? Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Tegan.